Hey everyone, welcome back to ArsenalAura. I'm Mihai, and after last week's special episode with Andrew from Arseblog, which by the way was a real treat, if you missed it, just hit pause and go check it out. We're back with someone who's been here before and always brings sharp takes. You know him, you've heard him, and you probably agreed with him at least once or twice. Welcome back to the pod, Joe.
Hello. Good to be here. Sorry, I'm not quite as esteemed as your last guest, but I'll do my best.
It's okay. No worries. No worries. We're going now. We have a couple of months since we started doing this, and you've been on a couple of episodes. So, it's always nice to get your insights and thoughts. But before we get into this week's madness, and there's plenty. I just want to quickly touch on last week's episode. If you caught the podcast with Andrew from Arseblog, it's been a bit of a milestone moment for ArsenalAura. We had a great mix of insights and nostalgia and some serious reality checks when it comes to where Arsenal are in this moment in time. So before we move to the elephants in the room, just want to ask you, did you listen to the episode too?
I did have a listen. I think I listened to it 1.5 times, actually.
Oh, that's good. You're going towards the second time listening, so that's nice. What's your biggest takeaway from with Andrew? Is there anything that you strongly agree with or maybe totally disagree with? Just give me an honest opinion here.
I'll give you one of each. So
Okay.
I think I agree with a lot of the points you made about like the Wenger era compared to today, in that the game's changed completely and the expectations have changed completely. You coming out the bat with the first question of Invincibles versus today's squad. Is this the best squad since the Invincibles? Was bold, but I mean, you're probably right. I think maybe it is the best squad since the Invincibles. I'm not saying it's better than, but yeah, I think what Andrew said about the expectations and how the landscape of football's changed completely. Like back then, it was Arsenal versus Man United, right? It was, the whole kind of money ball hadn't really started at that point. And then obviously Chelsea came in and completely changed everything. And we, horrible timing. Chelsea come in with, unlimited money. We, are building a stadium. We go into debt. We have to sell all our players and all our exciting prospects and whatnot. And yeah, so that was an interesting point. The point I completely disagree with, although I can understand where he's coming from, was the question, or more accurately, the answer to the question of who is the person that's going to make the most impact this season, be it a signing or an existing player. And he went with Gabriel Martinelli. And I think I've made my thoughts on Martinelli fairly clear in the last couple of podcasts. He answered, yeah, he basically said, Martinelli's obviously plateaued in the last few years and hasn't really struck the heights that he did before. I agree with that. What I don't see is a route for Martinelli to improve to the extent that he's like, our most important player or even one of our most important players. I just don't think, even if we buy the new players, or even especially if we buy the new players, I don't see how he exists in that framework in a way that he improves his current form. So I was really surprised to hear that as an answer. Like, I love Martinelli. Like, I think he's a great player, but I don't see it. Like, I just don't think it works.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, obviously going back to the Invincible a little bit and comparing with the current Arsenal squad, we have a team that it's exciting and it's loaded with potential, right? It's still not at the level of the Invincibles because of what the Invincibles achieved, right? And he's right. We know that, we can understand that, right? But I think it's very important to keep that in mind with everything that's going on, with all the transfer noise, because we're feeling we feel that we're getting closer, right? But we're not there yet. And what business we're going to do in this summer will be the difference between history repeating itself or kind of rewriting, sort of speak. And going to the Martinelli point, even if I saw him, you know, when he first signed for us, I was so excited because I had the model in my head, Shakhtar Donetsk, and there was a Romanian coach, Mircea Lucescu. He started bringing in really young Brazilian guys, and some of them even made it to the big leagues, right? And they were putting up a fight in the Champions League and so on, right? So when I saw Martinelli brought into Arsenal for 6 million, I think it was, and he was exciting in the first 2 seasons. And I said that to Andrew, he's the in the current squad, and you can disagree with that, but I think he's the maverick. He was the maverick type of guy, right? Because I was talking with Andrew about Eze, and he said that he doesn't understand where Eze would fit, because obviously Arteta has a really, really well and kind of strict way of playing and players in specific areas. So Eze is kind of a maverick. And I said that Martinelli in our current team is the closest we have to a maverick because of the first 2 seasons. Now, I don't know if he's been overcoached or because of the defensive duties that he has to do, and he's not. I think after the hamstring injury that he had in February this year, when he came back, he was a little bit more incisive and more. He had the tendency to dribble more and so on. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. I somewhere deep inside of me, I hope he'll become, or he'll reach his full potential. But if someone comes and offers 60 million plus for him, I might question my thoughts on that.
Yeah, if a Saudi Arabian club came in, or anyone, and said, "Hey, here's 60 million," I mean, like, absolutely, of course. There's really no question. I'd love to see him succeed at Arsenal. I really, really would love to see him succeed at Arsenal, because he's one of us. He's been around for so long.
Yeah,
I think his flair has been poached out of him. I think Arteta has certain expectations of wingers. And one of them is sort of counter to what wingers traditionally do, which is, don't lose the ball. So, don't lose so don't take any risks in which you might lose the ball. But then how do you do something special to create a chance if you're not taking any risks?
exactly.
And you see it with Saka. Saka's always surrounded by options to pass to, right? Like, well, he should be, at least. A lot of the time he finds himself sort of 3-on-1, which isn't great. But, Ødegaard always drifts over that side, and Timber's there, or White's there, or whoever is there. And he'll always have a safe pass, unless it's been a long ball up to him and whatnot, and he's on his own. But, like, there's always try and create a safe pass, or a couple of safe passes for Saka. And it's the same with Martinelli. Rice is always around, or Calafiori's always around, or Skelly's always around. And more often than not, certainly more than Saka at least, Martinelli takes that safe pass. And then on top of that, like, his shooting's just gone downhill so much. Like, 3-4 years ago, if he's through on goal, or if he's 1v1 with the goalkeeper, you bet the house on him scoring. Now I just wouldn't, and I don't know what happened. I have no idea what happened. And that's a shame. Like, if he still had that ability, ignoring his wing play, if his finishing was still what it was like 3-4 years ago, then he's still like a really top tier player. But without either, I don't see the value.
But aren't you curious to see him at least one season with a proper striker, or with a little bit more. If we bring Eze for Odegaard as a substitute or something, don't you want to see if he can reach that potential, maybe with some assists, maybe, being surrounded by some really good players might bring something like the performance against Liverpool, right? The last game at Anfield was, it was at Anfield, was pretty good, from him. He was played more centrally, kind of, he went into some good areas and positions. But I would be curious, of course, if a crazy offer comes in, you have to take it in consideration, right? Because he was brought in on such a small fee, right? Compared to the numbers that we're talking nowadays, you have to take it in consideration. But I would be curious because he can be electric. He's really fast. He's pacey. He has the ability kind of to dribble, and a little bit. He just needs to get a push over the edge a little bit. Unleash Martinelli. That should be a motto.
I don't know if we can afford to take that risk.
Yeah, probably.
We'll probably get to this later, but I think we this season need to be ready in every position to put our best foot forward. And I don't know, even with the better players around him, and arguably it's not that much better. I think the only big difference will be a striker. I don't know if he's up to the standard that we need to win the league. Like he can play well against Liverpool. That's great, awesome. But then he's the kind of player that should be scoring fairly regularly against lower teams, and he just doesn't. We drew 14 games last season, right? You need someone like Martinelli to be scoring 10, 15 goals a season, and he scored, 5, 6? I can't remember, but like low single figures. It doesn't work. Like you can't, that can't happen in a team that's going to win the league. So
yeah. So I think we'll circle back a little bit to the attacking area of the pitch, but actually let's talk about the elephants in the room. Noni Madueke, yes, the Noni from Chelsea. There's various reports, pretty kind of reliable, Ornstein or Fabrizio, that are saying that Arsenal have submitted a bid, or they're preparing a bid of 50 million pounds for a player who hasn't exactly lit up Stamford Bridge. And I do wonder myself why. Now, listen, I'm not, I don't want to say that Madueke doesn't have talent, but I'm trying to judge the move, right? What does it tell us? What does it mean, right? Is it part of a bigger plan, or are we just getting a little bit time constrained? Maybe, I don't know, time pressured. I mean, if Noni Madueke is a complementary signing with another left winger and the striker and so on, that would make a little bit more sense. But if he is the option for left wing or maybe even right wing from time to time to replace Saka, and Andrew mentioned last week in the pod that this iteration of Arsenal under Arteta, they kind of don't sign players unless they really fit the system. So is Madueke a tactical kind of weapon? I don't know. Is he rotation? Is it just depth? Or are we seeing a change in kind of mentality at Arsenal since Berta came in?
okay, I was thinking about this in the car on the way here. So I was on a long drive on the way here, and I listened to the podcast from last week with Andrew. And I knew you were going to ask me this question. So this is going to be a very long answer. Sorry. But basically, since Arteta came in, right, he inherited this this ship of Arsenal with all these holes in the hull, right, and there's water seeping in, and he's standing there and he's looking down and he's thinking, right, which of these holes do I need to plug? So he plugs the Aubameyang hole and the Lacazette hole and gets rid of that, and then he sorts out the defense. And as he's sorting these issues out, actually a couple more are appearing. So every time he sorts like 2 or 3 issues out, 1 or 2 more issues appear, and so we finish in 8th, we finish in 5th, and things slowly get better. The defense is suddenly solid. It's like, great, okay, we've sorted the defense out. Oh, but now the midfield isn't really giving us any output. Oh, well, that's not great. Let's fix the midfield. So Rice comes in and Partey comes in, and Odegaard, etc., etc. And it's like, okay, great. And then what he's done is he's essentially now ruined our attack in that we don't really have any sort of coherent attack. And if you take Saka out of it, it's pretty ineffective, which is exactly what happened, right? So we've had, of the 6 seasons, I think he's been in charge now, 2 of them, we played at a Premier League winning level for maybe 90% of the season, right? Not quite enough to win it, but we got a really good output in terms of points, and we had some amazing performances and runs. I think it was 2 years ago, that run from January to almost the end of the season where we're winning 5-0, 6-0, 5-0, every other week. And like, that's where we want to be, right? And we knew we could do it. So this season, he's sorted out the midfield, he's sorted out the defense, he's created a system that can beat big teams consistently. Like, we just don't lose against big teams anymore. There's obviously the PSG game falls outside of that. And that was more down to the squad depth, right? So there's, going back to the holes in the bottom of the boat, there's not many left, right? There's not many of these holes with water pouring in anymore. We're almost like, above water. We're almost in a good place. But one of those holes that he's created a structure that can beat really big, strong teams, is that he's completely isolated Martinelli on the left wing, right? So he's fairly ineffective. And the other hole is that there's no depth whatsoever and no creativity whatsoever, especially against smaller teams, in our front 4. So I'm including the Odegaard position as a front 4. And one of the other holes that has happened that he plugged to an extent is the complete lack of rotation options. So he had this incredible first 11, right? And they basically played non-stop for 3 years in a row, came second. But we couldn't rotate any of them. They're all exhausted, and they were injured last season because they played so many games in a row. And I think that's the hole he's trying to plug now. So there's that hole, that rotation and that kind of flexibility of options hole, and the striker hole, which we'll probably talk about in a minute. And I think Madueke comes in as a Saka backup, which we've never really had. So if you look at the last 4 or 5 years, who has been even close to Saka if Saka's fit? No one. If you take Saka out of the team, like I said, our chance of scoring just plummets. It's just not going to happen, right? You're reliant on, I don't know, Marino coming out with something crazy, which we had to rely on for far too long, or Havertz.
Yeah, you're relying on Neri now, but yeah, I understand your point.
Neri would never have played if Saka wasn't injured. Is my point. There's such a massive gap in ability on that side of the pitch. So I think Arteta has learned that not only do we need 2 people in every position, that we need 3 people in every position, and that third person needs to be someone who can play in multiple positions. So if you look at the first 11, you got Gabriel and Saliba, right? Completely untouchable, incredible at their singular position. Then you got Kivior, great, he can play in 2 positions. Ben White, 2 positions. Timber, 3, arguably 4 positions. And it kind of goes on and on like that. You got Miles Lewis-Skelly, great, 2, 3, 4, maybe even positions. Havertz can play in a couple of positions, etc., etc. We haven't got really wingers who are effective in that way, and we certainly don't have a cam. Like, there's no attacking midfielder bar Ødegaard right now that is, again, anywhere near as good as Ødegaard. I don't think Ødegaard was even close to good enough last season. But the fact that there's no one even challenging him, and I still don't put Nwaneri as someone who's challenging Ødegaard for that first team space, because he's far away from it. You just wouldn't put him there. So if we brought an Eze in, right? You were saying to Andrew, like, what do we do with Eze? Well, there's so many things we could do with Eze. We could start with 2 10s, for example. If you're playing against, I forget who got promoted, but yeah, if you're playing against the smaller teams, why not play with 2 10s? Why not play with 3 at the back? Why not, have Havertz and the strike, Gyokeres on the pitch? It shouldn't matter. Like, we should be blowing these teams away, and it's going to be a low block for half the game. You need creative players on the pitch. Great. Have a Eze and Ødegaard and 2 wingers and a striker. Brilliant. Let's do it.
And Madueke.
Yeah, but why the hell not? Go crazy. Like,
so you think this is depth? You absolutely
it has to be depth. Yeah. There's no way. Well, is he going to start for us? No. Like, there's no way he starts for us. No, exactly. So it's a market opportunity. All it tells us, in my eyes, is that we need a viable backup to Saka, who can play a couple of Champions League games, can play if Saka gets injured, and not wildly lower the level of our front three. It's a sensible signing. I don't like it. I like the thought behind it, because, as in, we need someone good enough to replace Saka if he's not around. I don't like buying players from Chelsea. If he was playing at like Dortmund or Shakhtar Donetsk or whoever, we'd be like, oh, this is great. This is cool. We've got this player, this exotic, awesome player. Whereas it's a Chelsea player, and now it's a problem. Like, that, my problem with it is Chelsea. A lot of other people's problem with it is that we're giving Chelsea money, as we always seem to love doing. We got to stop doing that. But I guess the player himself isn't a problem. Like, I think it's a fairly good idea. But I don't think it's like game changing, but it's a good idea.
Would you evaluate him at 50+ million?
I don't think it matters.
We're paying a lot of money for someone who's not going to be a starter theoretically, unless Arteta uncovers a gem, or I don't know, whatever. But it might be high risk, high reward, and have a backup plan or a substitute player who can play in multiple positions and can add very high value to the team. But in the same time, it's 50+ million, and their argument is that, I don't know, Elanga or whoever went with 52 million. That's the argument,
Okay, show me the Man City bench. Show me the Liverpool bench. It's full of 50 million plus players, right? We need to get out of this mindset, and it's the same with Gyokeres. We need to get out of this mindset that we buy cheap players and we invest our emotional attachment into these players. We want them to be successful. We have to buy players who are ready to do something. Like last season, if Saka gets injured and we have Madueke on the bench, we're in a hell of a lot better position than having Sterling on the bench, right? I don't care that it's £50 million. £50 million is not going to score us 10 goals a season in the bank. Like, it doesn't do that. A decent player on the bench might do that. Score us goals, right? Like, so if we've got the money and we're able to spend it, and it looks like we do have the money and we are planning on spending a lot of it, then great. This is good. This should be considered a good thing. I would love to have a bench like Man City, like Paris Saint-Germain, of £50 million plus players. Like, that's the dream. I don't want to have a 16-year-old on the bench like we did against Paris Saint-Germain, and a 17-year-old, and an 18-year-old, and a 19-year-old, like, who have never played a Champions League game in their life in a Champions League semi-final. I want to have a player like Madueke. So I think it's a good thing.
He needs to he needs to deliver a 50 million on the bench, right? Because if you pay 50 plus or 50 million for him and he's on the bench, and you say we have a bench of 50 million pounds players, you're right. But if you put them on the pitch and they're 10% better than Sterling, you kind of think like maybe it's a little bit of wasted money. Of course, there's the other thing that maybe I mean, obviously the other players are more expensive, but I think a lot of fans, it's in my head. I can tell you it's in my head that, you take a large chunk of your budget and you purchase someone who might not be, top notch, even for a substitute player. I don't know him. I don't, I didn't follow him a lot. I saw him a couple of times. I won't watch the highlights on YouTube or
Yeah.
whatever else because it's gonna be, he's gonna be presented as Messi or whatever. Don't wanna, be disappointed, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. Maybe it's not a lot. Maybe we can find some sort of a middle ground. Let's see how it goes. But it, moving to the striker position, right? If Madueke is 50-55, there were there were discussions about Viktor Gyokeres' release clause, which is 52 million pounds or something like that, 58, which would make sense given his insane numbers, although he comes with a little bit of a little bit more of a risk that he comes from a lower tier league or something like that. But it's back and forth. A couple of days ago, we heard that that's it. We're on the final stretch with him. People are negotiating with Sporting and whatever else. And now you find that we hit a roadblock again with Sporting and with as we did with Leipzig. I think with Sesko we had more issues with the club and with the player, on the wages, on the structure, everything. And I think Leipzig wanted something above like the higher end of 80 million or something like that, 90, whatever. And I think they figure out, hey, that's too much. Why why does it happen? Like, is are we difficult since Berra came in? That do we have a new way of dealing things? Are Sporting and Leipzig difficult? Is what's going on? What's happening? I don't know.
That's okay. I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, I'm in the know, whatever. Like I've been around football for long enough to kind of recognize the patterns and understand how different people act. And my impression of Berta is what he does, and he's been described by, what was it? I think it was Fabrizio Romano or someone else as like the best in the business when it comes to negotiating, right? And what he seems to do is he'll set up 2 or 3 signings simultaneously for the same position, and he'll sort of, make them compete against each other to drive the price down. And he'll pick targets that probably want to leave or are actually really interested in joining Arsenal, or there's some sort of issue they have with the club or whatever, right? And what we've done on this occasion, and I think also with, the Eze and the Madueke and all these other pieces, is we've set up a Sesko versus, Gyokeres scenario where we're saying, right, we'll be really open about it in the media for once. We're going to buy one of them, right? Everyone knows we're going to buy one of them. It actually wouldn't surprise me at this point if we just like bought Isaac out of the blue or just like some random other striker. But I think like it's likely to be Gyokeres from what we heard. I think Leipzig have a stronger position with Sesko in that he's younger, and you can sell the potential there. You can say, okay, he's 23, 24, I think he is. And he's got years ahead of him. I think he just signed a new contract last year when we tried to buy him, which was a little bit annoying. So we're in a really weak position to get that deal over the line. I think maybe that was the one that we wanted to get, honestly, but it's just become impossible. And, as that's come out in the media that we can't get Sesko anymore because Leipzig are, putting that out there, suddenly the Gyokeres deal becomes more difficult because now they know that they're the only ones in the frame. So if a story comes out tomorrow that we're buying some other striker, right? It's probably just another tactic. And I kind of think like that's the Madueke thing feeds into that with like Eze as well. And like we've even got there's links to Anthony Gordon and all these other players. And it's like, okay, we're moving like real fast. This is not like Arsenal. We're in contract discussions with all these players. And I don't know if we're as close as is being reported with some of them. I think it's maybe very intentional where it's like, oh, I'm Crystal Palace. I'm trying to sell Eze because like he's at the kind of peak of his value. Like he's not gonna get any more you're not gonna get any more value out of him than you are right now. Well, do I want to sell Eze? Yeah, I probably do want to sell Eze, but Arsenal are now trying to buy Madueke and they're trying to buy all these other players. Are they going to buy Eze from me? And Eze only wants to join Arsenal, so I have to sell Eze to Arsenal. Oh, crap. What's going on? So, like, I think that's the kind of scenario he's trying to set up. And I think he's maybe screwed it up a little bit with the Sesko and Gyokeres scenario. But I think maybe it'll land us an Eze and maybe it'll land us a Rodrigo. Like Rodrigo's situation is a little bit different in that like there doesn't seem to be a clear alternative. Maybe we're going to hear things about like Anthony Gordon, like I say, or I don't know, some other, fairly high profile left winger will suddenly be linked to Arsenal in the next few weeks. I see that one going the distance. I see it being like a close to the end of the transfer window kind of scenario where Rodrigo's like, well, actually, I've just been benched for the 5th time in a row, which is what's happening at the moment. I have to leave. There's no way for me to get back into this team.
So you think the winger one will take more?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think that'll be after pre-season is like done and dusted, right? That'll be like way into at the start of the season, basically.
Do you think we have money to buy Rodrigo, Eze, Gyokeres, Madueke, and all the other guys we bought, Subimendi and Kepa and whatever else is? I think it goes beyond 250 or something.
In terms of PSR, we have that room to maneuver because we didn't buy anyone in January, because we're on kind of record profit in all sorts of areas. I think it's possible. I also think there's going to be some outgoings, right? And there already have been. Partey and Jorginho's wages pretty high. They've gone. Tierney's gone. Zinchenko's likely to leave. Looks like Trossard might be leaving as well. There'll probably be one or two others on top of that. Maybe some of the youth prospects will go out. Wages alone, we saved a decent chunk of money. And I think this is the season. I'll take you back to the interview with Arteta at the end of last season. Where he said, I'm super excited about last season. I can't wait to get started, etc., etc. It's because he knew, we've got a huge amount of money coming in. We've got a new sporting director coming in. We've got everything is ready for us to win this season. And this is it. This has to be it, right? Like this is the one. If this isn't a successful season for Arteta, I don't know what will be, assuming that we get those targets that we've mentioned.
Let me ask you some quick questions, maybe yes or no questions. Let's see.
Okay.
Is Gyokeres the one that can help us get over the line?
Do you want me to answer yes or no? Because I could give you a lot of words, or I could give you one word.
Just give me a yes or no. I'm just curious. What do you think?
Is he?
It has to be yes or no.
Line? Okay. Yes. Do you want to know why?
Yes.
Because he solves a problem. I'm talking about our holes in our ship problem, right? So we shored up the beating big teams problem, which created a not being able to beat small teams problem. We 14 draws last season. People are saying, Gyokeres doesn't score against the big teams. I don't care. If you convert those 14 draws into 10 wins, we win the league.
Yeah.
And Gyokeres will score in those games. You say, he's most of his goals are hat tricks or penalties against rubbish teams in Portugal. Great. That's exactly what we need. That's exactly the problem we have. Fantastic. I need someone to score those damn goals.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. Um, Moving from one end to the pitch to the other, do you think we have a title-winning defense?
Yes, 100%. Doesn't need
Okay.
explaining.
Do you think the trio Odegaard, Zubimendi, Rice is a title-winning midfield,
Yeah,
including Odegaard?
yeah.
Okay.
Supermendy makes Erdogan's life so much easier, honestly.
Can't wait to see him play. Like that's really exciting.
He also makes Martinelli better, by the way. So it's going to be interesting. I think Zubimendi will be an absolute revelation, and people will be like, "Oh wow, a defensive midfielder could do this! Incredible!"
Choose one, Martinelli or Trossard, to stay.
Stay. Well, Martinelli, better player.
Okay. And I think you can, like, even if you sell him in 1 or 2 years, you have to sell him more than 6 million. So you always
Yeah.
have a margin there. It's like the market at this point in time is like,
The only reason I would sell Martinelli over Trossard is if we needed the money to get a better left winger, right? Like
yeah,
if we had Rodrigo and Martinelli, that's better than Rodrigo and Trossard. But if we can't get Rodrigo without selling Martinelli, then I take Rodrigo and Trossard as the option. Because I think Rodrigo, whilst he's not much of a step up from Martinelli, he is a step up from Martinelli.
yeah. So yeah, those were the two elephants in the room. There's obviously we're waiting for Norgard's announcement, right? Because photos emerged of him at the training center and whatever else. But I think we can leave some topics for another episode, maybe next week, or we'll see. Maybe we get some evolution on those deals, and maybe we'll definitely have some more to talk about. So look, Joe, whether it's Madueke at an eyebrow raising fee or the on again, off again Gyökeres saga going on and on and on, Arsenal's transfer business this summer is going to shape our season and what we win, and that's pretty obvious, right? We had 3 straight years of almost, right, coming second.
Yeah.
And that's good, but it's not enough. We have to come out first. um it- I think we'll do it. I think we're so close. I think the experience is there. Most of the team has been in this battle for the last 3 years. We're really, really, really close. We just need the final gaps, as you said, to fill in the final plugs in order for the boat not only to stay at the surface, but to go at high speed. So, Joe, thank you so much for joining in today. Thank you so much for listening. The pod with Arseblog. We would have had a problem if you wouldn't. No, I'm kidding. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe, leave a comment, share it with a fellow gunner. And if you haven't yet, go check out the Arseblog episode from last week. It's full of perspective, laughs, and some lasagna trauma. Don't forget about that. Trust me, it'll make more sense when you hear it. So thanks again, Joe, for being here. And as always, up the Arsenal.